This is the raw photo, and this is the final shot. Before we get started, these are the photos we will be editing today. So we're going to start with a pretty basic photo. I usually start with one of my presets, see what they are. And I made this preset, and I was like, hey, this fits the vibe. And that's basically all I need to do for editing. Maybe up the exposure a little bit. I'll go to the masks and I'll do my little touch-ups. I like to start off with lowering the exposure on the ground a bit. Not too much, or else the cars will look like they're floating. You don't want that. Cars, exposure up a little bit. I like to bump up the shadows, but that's just my style. I like to see how sharp the cars are. I shot this at 2.8. So this isn't in focus as much. What I can do to kind of fix that is increase the clarity just a little bit. You don't want to do it too much, or else it'll look like digital sharpness, but it's still not in focus, but it looks better outside. I go back to the masking, the objects. This is where details matter. I select the windows. Usually it's hit or miss. You'll see it selected the windows. Turn the exposure down. I was using a CPL here. Sometimes it doesn't work that well because there's just so much light. Doing a little object mask and then tinting the windows. And I'll do that for both cars. Sometimes it'll select the roof and you'll have to unselect that. Like right now it's going to the pillar, so I'll just softly remove that from the mask. And you've got a tinted windshield. There's still some right there. Touch that up. There's your windshield. And then I'll go back, objects, get the side windows. That one did a good job. And tint the windows. And then another thing I like to do is, the object mask is my friend. I like to go over the headlights and bump the highlights up and the exposure down just a little bit so it doesn't look as hazy. I'll just subtract that so it doesn't affect the color of the car. And then I'll do the same thing on this car. It really just depends on what car headlights you're shooting, because some it won't tint the right way. And then the last thing I like to do is do a little mask on the wheels. I like to make them pop a little bit, especially because I bumped the shadows down. Exposure up just a little bit. Not that much, just 30. And then we'll get another on this one. Since these are not that shadowed, we'll probably only have to go up like to make them look somewhat natural, yeah. And then after that, I like to test the sky. Sometimes it doesn't work, but I'll bring a linear gradient down and I'll see what the sky looks like just by completely bringing it down. This sky, it's alright, but I'll give it that dramatic effect. Turn it down, give it clarity so the clouds can pop a bit. Dehaze it, not too much or else it'll look like that. We're almost done. I'll do some touch-ups, like these poles, they're distracting. I'll usually use the heel. And then these are next. Sometimes the clone tool works. So there's that pole removed. And then we'll update the masking. And then I'll go for a 2x1 crop, because I'm obsessed with 2x1 crops. So for this video, we'll do a 9x16 crop. And there you go. There's the first image, completely finished. So for these two photos, I'm just gonna do them really quick because there's not a lot to be edited other than just a preset and some masks. So I'll speed run these two and then we'll get to this one, 'cause this one's fun.
Midriff preset. Shut the shadows up just a little bit. And then we'll put the masks. Hit the wheels with the gradient. Bottom up just a little bit. And then we'll hit the object mask.
And that's the windshield tinted. It may look odd like when you're editing it because you see it without the tint beforehand. Like
Kind of mid. So I'll just blow it out. With a linear gradient. And the linear gradient down here. Slows it down, but shadows up. So you still want to have the car somewhat. But this image really sharp. Shot on a Nikon Z6. So I got 24 megapixels. Crop this. And then for this car down here, I'm just going to use generative remove. It seems to be good at removing cars. That are unwanted. Oh, look at that. That car is no longer.
Lightroom just crashed. We'll repeat this real quick. Midriff preset, shadows, exposure. Again. Turn that up. Turn this down, down. Then we'll brush mask. Turn the shadows up. And then we'll hit his windshield with object mask. Tint it. I do separate object masks because they're both different exposures. So if I were to do this one on this window, it would just it would look weird. But yeah, that's the photo. On to the next. Good morning. It's a new day. We are on to the next photo. We will start with the same preset that I've been using on these other photos. I'm gonna do a lot more to this photo than the other ones because there's more to edit, there's more to remove. I just like to mess with the photos a little bit. So I'll bring the reds up to bring the contrast out of the red car. And then for the blue, I'll just mess with the sliders. It depends on what color the car is. Sometimes I'll use this color picker and see what this is. But sometimes it just doesn't work. I think this car is just like gray tone. Bring the whites down just a little bit. And then we'll go to the masking. Get an object mask. I'm going to object mask these reflections here. And just turn the exposure down on them. Turn the highlights down. And then do the same for this car. I'll go back over the red windshield. Turn the exposure down on that. And go to the windows again. And turn their exposure down on that. And then we'll do that again for the gray car. There we go. And turn them down. And then we'll go to the wheels. Just add 2 radial masks. Turn the exposure up just a little bit. And then we'll get a radial gradient. Turn the exposure down to see the clouds. Turn that down just a little bit. Go to clarity. Just to bring out the clouds. Dehaze it just a little bit. And there you go. We'll get a linear gradient on the bottom. Darken it just a little bit. And then before I go on to removing things, I like to denoise all my photos because it just makes the car's reflections smoother. Even if the photo isn't noisy, it'll still make the cars look like how you see them in real life. But this is optional. It takes longer, but depending on what you're doing, denoising is always helpful. Like, look at that. They're just smooth. They look like cars. After that, I'll update AI settings. And then you're gonna have to do this again after you remove things, but I just need to make sure with how I edit, I make sure I get my final edit and then I remove things. That's how I do it. It's probably not the most efficient thing ever, but that's just how I do it. We're going to use the clone tool to remove these parking lines just to get the space to be more clean. And then we'll update the AI settings, and there's your final photo. Next up, I'm going to show you how to edit this photo into this photo. So we're going to start with the midriff preset as per usual. We're going to up the exposure. Don't be afraid to up the exposure. It's not going to hurt you. Yes, it's noisy. This was shot at, I'm pretty sure, 5000 ISO, f2.8, 1/100th of a second. We will make it a little warm. Bring the reds out. Make sure the car is still the same color. It's getting a little orange, so we'll just slide that slider a little bit. Make it really red. We will bump the clarity up just a little bit. If you bump it up past that, yeah, you could do that if that's your style. But for what I'm doing for this photo, it's moody. The shadows are bumped. It kind of has like a little fade effect. And so I will do that. Bump the contrast just a little bit. And before I go to masking, we'll hit a denoise. And after the denoise, you can see it's improved a lot. Like, you can see the cars. It's not as grainy anymore. This was shot on a Nikon, so it's basically a Sony. It's really good in low light, but even then, I always denoise my night photos. It just makes it look so much better. I'm not a big fan of grain. It's not my style. I'll do it on like vintage cars, but even then, I don't shoot much vintage. We'll go to the subject mask. Eliminate what AI thinks is the subject. Up the exposure on just the cars. Make them pop a little bit. Bump the shadows up and the whites down, and then we'll get a linear gradient this time instead of a radial gradient, and we will get the sky. Bump the exposure up just a little bit. Put the clarity in. DAs just a little bit, and make it a little warmer. And then we'll tint the windshields as I have been. And after I object mask the windows, I will 2x1 crop it, put it in just a little bit, center it, and then we will remove all the distractions now. Go clone tool, get rid of this. There's a little debris here. Okay. Clone tool doesn't work there, doesn't know what to do. I'll pull out generative remove. Remove that, and there we go. We'll see if it blends a little better with any of these. It's probably our best bet right there. And then these light poles, I kind of like them, but for the sake of cleaning up the environment, I'll just go right over them. A lot of people aren't fond of the generative AI remove, but it's a handy tool to have. You could use it or you can't. It's really personal preference. I use it every now and then for distractions that will take too long to clone stamp. So, don't hate me. AI isn't going to take our job. So, but this is the final photo. It probably looks a little different from the photo I showed. And that's because the photo I showed was the one I sent the client. This is just edited right now, so it's gonna look a little different, but I'll bring the warmth up just to kind of match that photo. And yeah, that's how I edit my photos. If you have any questions, let me know, and if you need any help, I'm glad to help. Thank you for watching. See you later.